Do you know what the impression is? That André Mendonça is acting like Sergio Moro to try to use the situation to discredit Lula in the election, benefiting Flávio Bolsonaro. Because of the way he's acting, that's what it seems like as a police chief, and he can't do that. As the prosecutor general now too, and he can't do that. The prosecutor general doesn't know who is being investigated. And the judge knows, and the prosecutor general doesn't know. What kind of madness is this, people? People, this is worse than Operation Car Wash. Now we have Sergio Moro 2.0, whose name is André Mendonça. This is mockery. Now here's what I want to know. Are you going to tell the prosecutor general, who has special jurisdiction by virtue of office, so that he is the one competent to investigate? Or are you going to hide it from the attorney general? No. I repeat, if it's even true. Because if that were true, you'll have to excuse me. If it's due process, the attorney general would have known about it a long time ago. If he doesn't know about it, it's not due process. This investigation has serious problems. André Mendonça, the new Sergio Moro. You can write that down. No, this is serious. André Mendonça is the new Sergio Moro from Operation Car Wash. They're using this and just going to drag it out. Lulinha, Lulinha, drink, 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 drink. Nothing at all so far. To try to wear down Lula and see if Flávio Bolsonaro can get elected. But that's not going to happen. Flávio Bolsonaro was kicked out. He was going to have an event in São Paulo together with Tarcísio, and he was kicked out. Kicked out. When he arrived at the event, there was a protest there. Where are the 61 million reais? Where is it? Where is the accounting for the money stolen from Daniel Vorcaro? You want to know something? I'll be very honest with you. Given this context, this collusion of the new Sergio Moro in the Supreme Federal Court, people will have to take to the streets to ask, where is Daniel Vorcaro's money? Where is the order to lift secrecy? Where is the search and seizure against Flávio Bolsonaro? Because André Mendonça is also the justice assigned to the case, right? In this police investigation that is looking into Flávio along with Vorcaro. And so far, nothing. The guy is charging more than 60 million from Daniel Vorcaro, charging who? Flávio Bolsonaro. And he even says they've already received more than 61 million. And so far, no one has accounted for anything. And that money is stolen money. And so far, nothing. Flávio is protected. The people will have to take to the streets. At Flávio's demonstrations, they'll have to go there and ask Flávio with signs and everything. Where's Vorcaro's money? Where's the accounting for that money? Because André Mendonça doesn't seem like he's going to do that. At the very least, Flávio Bolsonaro should be summoned to testify and explain. That's the least that should be done. And so far, nothing. And look here, please take Mendonça out of there. I can't do it myself. Help me, for God's sake. I'm talking, I'm explaining. Look here. Protesters demonstrate against Flávio and Tarcísio before the event in São Paulo. Posters mention the transfer of 61 million from Vorcaro for Bolsonaro's film. Look at the posters. Where are the 61 million? Money for the film. Where is the film's accounting? Where is the money? Where is it? Flávio Bolsonaro, Ricardo Nunes, we don't want you in the community. Tarcísio, out. Then there's the toll issue too, and the whole situation around Tarcísio. People are fed up, guys. It's just empty talk, and sometimes not even that. He even says, I don't know anyone an explanation. But he does. He has a lot of explaining to do. And now people will have to go out on the streets to ask. Since André Mendonça doesn't act, people will have to go out on the streets. Put it on. Where is the accounting for the 61 million from Forcaro, Flavio? Where is it? Meanwhile, Globo makes up a story about the government buying cannabidiol in a new fabrication about Lulinha. The SUS did not distribute the medication. There was no contract with the SUS regarding this situation. If this woman had Lula's son as her representative, the contract would have been made. The contract was not made. That situation did not happen. But Lula also acts correctly. Lula tells his son's lawyer that Fábio needs to explain himself. Marco Aurélio de Carvalho stated that the meeting with the president was about the campaign in São Paulo and criticized the leaks. The situation is as follows. In any case, Lula's son will have to explain himself to the people because they are trying to frame him, to hold Lula responsible, bringing trouble for Lula. And no one should cover up for anyone. Now, this situation with André Mendonça saying that there are people with special jurisdiction by virtue of office, that's why he's the justice handling the case at the Prosecutor General's office, and the Attorney General doesn't know who it is, that's absurd. Totally absurd. Wow, investigators agreed to reopen negotiations with Forcaro, but demand full plea bargain testimony. Wow. One of the criteria for resuming negotiations would be that the former banker doesn't lie again. Wow. Name those evolved. So he was going to give a statement. Daniel Forcaro, yesterday, he's already under arrest, blah, 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 and all that. Yesterday afternoon, to the federal police. And his statement was postponed because the lawyers asked for more time. What he wants is to rat people out. But this time, is he going to spill the beans, lie, or keep hiding information? Because one of the things he's going to have to spill the beans about, that he's going to have to talk about, is exactly the money that went to the movie. Because it was stolen money. If it even went to the movie, that's the thing, right? He's going to have to talk. He's going to have to tell everything now. And even so, I'm not so sure, you know? These people might be digging, like I've already told you, to get the case thrown out. And it could all be just talk, nothing but hot air. And meanwhile, look here, could it have been Daniel Forcaro who paid for this? Pay attention. Paulo Figueiredo donated to the US Congresswoman who authored the law against Moraes. The Bolsonaro supporter Paulo Figueiredo donated more than $54,000 to the re-election campaign of the U.S. Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar. Figueiredo made 3 donations in August 2024, within the allowed amount. A month before Salazar proposed a bill against Moraes, in August 2024. Could it be Paulo Figueiredo's money? Or is it Daniel Forcaro's money? It was used for that too. I don't doubt anything. Let's keep going here. In September of that year, Salazar introduced the No Censors on Our Shores Act against foreign authorities accused of violating freedom of expression. The main justification for the proposal was Moraes' decision, which led to the suspension of Musk's acts in Brazil. Salazar was re-elected, and with the new legislature, she had to reintroduce the bill. In February 2025, Eduardo Bolsonaro and Figueiredo visited the Congresswoman's office and asked her to resubmit her bill. But the proposal did not move forward and is still being processed in the American Congress. You tell and I tell. It will not be approved. Why, André? Because it's unconstitutional. The United States can't even handle their own problems. Whoever interferes in other countries, in what other countries decide or don't decide, is going to get screwed. Now, what I want to know is where this money came from. 54,000. Where did this money come from? The money that paid the congresswoman? Yeah, Dudu Bananinha. That's why I say their bank secrecy needs to be lifted. Oh, André, but Eduardo Bolsonaro and Paulo Figueiredo have their accounts frozen. But at that time, their accounts weren't frozen yet. And they can analyze up to 5 years back. There has to be a lifting of bank secrecy. They see the money that came in, the money that went out, where it went, and when it went out. And André Mendonça, nothing, nothing, nothing at all. Right, André Mendonça? Meanwhile, there are people getting nervous. There are people getting nervous. Why? Because the admiral, no, not admiral, Brigadier Batista Jr. is talking, giving an interview, saying that he's going to release his book now in September. And he said that the only reason the coup d'etat wasn't carried out, that it remained just an attempt, was because Freire Gomes, the commander of the army, didn't accept it. He's clear about this. He's giving an interview and talking about the whole situation. Freire Gomes didn't accept the coup. That's why it wasn't carried out. And Bolsonaro is being charged with attempted coup. He was sentenced to 27 years for it. He also said that he saw the last attempt, like the last one, because Freire Gomes wouldn't discuss it with Bolsonaro anymore after that. When Bolsonaro confronted General Freire Gomes, that's when Freire Gomes said, if you keep talking like this, I'm going to have to arrest you. The brigadier even said in the interview he gave to Alvo that he was shocked. Because they never imagined they would go through a situation like this, where the army commander had to tell his leader that if he kept up with that talk, he would have to arrest him. So the brigadier made it clear the coup attempt was real. It just didn't happen because General Freire Gomes, who was the army commander at the time, said no. And he led it no Summit Federal because there were threats, even intimidating their families. So there are no saints in this story, no. And I know one thing, this book is going to bother a lot of people. I'm going to read it and I'll bring excerpts from this book to you here during the live streams. I'm already letting you know because it's very important. His statement, his book is already bothering so many people that Eduardo Bolsonaro posted attacking the brigadier. It's true. Look at this. Eduardo Bolsonaro, Uncle Chuchuca of Moraes, stooping to legitimize the arrest of old ladies. The ones who put those old ladies in jail were you, Eduardo Bolsonaro, Flávio Bolsonaro, and Bolsonaro himself, who played into those old ladies' foolish ideas. And you took them to January 8th as cannon fodder. Yeah, it was you who got those old ladies jailed over January 8th, because January 8th was just the day of a series of connected acts prepared, financed, orchestrated, previously arranged and planned by Bolsonaro and the core group. Yeah, you rounded up the sheep. You used the sheep. You played on those sheep's weak minds. They led the sheep to the slaughter and then abandoned them. You were the ones who did this. It wasn't Brigadier here. It wasn't Alexandre de Moraes. No, it was you, okay? Now you're very brave from afar. Come back to Brazil and bring that bravery here. That's not what Brazilians expect from the military. But we also can't generalize an entire institution based on the opinion of just one bad apple. Yeah, bad apple. You know who that is, right? Look, Fabio, we were very close to an institutional breakdown during Bolsonaro's government. So it really bothered you, right? Right. About Dudu Bananinha? By the way, I'm waiting for his conviction to become final. The deadline is coming up. And Alexandre de Moraes, at any time, will order Eduardo Bolsonaro to start serving his sentence, which will be in a semi-open regime. At night, he stays in jail if it's at Papuda, because that's where his residence is. At night, he goes to Papuda. And during the day, if he has authorized work, he leaves Papuda to work. If not, he'll stay in Papuda and serve his sentence there. Eduardo Bolsonaro for obstruction of justice. If he doesn't show up, you hear me? Eduardo Bananinha. If you, Bananinha, don't show up, if he doesn't show up, he will be declared a fugitive. He will be put on Interpol's red notice list. And that will put an end to those little trips he's been taking, because the next trip he takes, he'll be arrested at the airport. That's why it is the way it is, right? Flávio has to win. Flávio has to win, because if Flávio doesn't win, everyone is screwed. Bolsonaro is already screwed. Eduardo is already screwed. And Flávio is the next one to be screwed. Flapado, screwed. That's why they're desperate. That's why he's nervous. If he's nervous, we have to talk more and show more. And I will talk and I will show more. Look at what happened yesterday. Very important. Put it up, Eduardo. Rotten banana. Jesus, good. I liked it. Look here. Brazil's Supreme Court expands the Maria da Penha law to cases without a connection between the victim and the aggressor. Protective measures now cover situations of gender-based violence outside the home and intimate relationships. This changes everything. Because here's the thing. The Maria da Penha law about violence against women and all has very heavy penalties. 40 years in prison nowadays for femicide and so on. At first, it was applied, and Brazil's Supreme Court changed that yesterday. It was applied to situations of domestic violence inside the home, involving family, or an intimate romantic relationship. So the crimes that happened within the family environment, domestic and intimate, in an intimate and emotional relationship, was there violence against women, Maria da Penha, not just there anymore. Now it's any kind of violence. Andrea, give me an example, for example. Give me an example, for God's sake, okay? What am I not understanding? Example, for example, a woman suffers violence in her workplace. Maria da Penha, you're in trouble. A woman suffers violence in the political field. Yeah, now it's going to be Maria da Penha. The woman, for example, there's a man on her street near her house who started trouble with her. And there's some violence going on, neighbor and all, and you apply the Maria da Penha law to him. Yeah. My dear and sweetheart, things are getting rough. And do you know why this is happening? Because of violence against women. As violence has increased, especially in the Bolsonaro supporting states, we have to say it, right, Tarcísio? The Federal Supreme Court gave the strictest interpretation for applying the law. Now it's tough on the defendant. And that's not all that was decided either. The following was also decided: that the judge who lacks jurisdiction has to make the decision immediately. Wait, Andrea, what do you mean? I'll explain it to you. Many times a woman requests a protective order and it goes to the judge who is on duty. And the judge isn't a specialist in that area. Do you know what the judge says? They forward it to the next shift for a competent judge, and they don't make a decision. In that time gap, when the judge doesn't authorize the protective order or make a decision about arresting or imprisoning the violent man, the woman is killed. Not anymore. If the judge lacks jurisdiction, meaning if he's not from that specific area of women's protection and all that, if it comes to him, which is a matter of being on duty and so on, he has to decide. Then it goes to the competent judge to see if he agrees or not. But the judge can't pass it on to someone else. Because during that time gap, there are women being murdered. Right, Andrea? Yes, that's the reality. That's what's happening. The federal Supreme Court said no. In the judge's hands. If the judge stops the request, the judge has to decide. And always for the benefit of protecting the woman. And there's something else too. Many times, especially in rural areas, the police chief can issue a restraining order, a protective measure. The man can't come near, can't get close, can't call, can't post on social media. The police chief himself can already decide this today, right? Right. But what often happens in rural areas? The police chief is traveling. There are only a few agents on duty. It happens. It happens. Unfortunately, this happens in many states. It's not ideal. Ideally, there should always be a police chief on duty. But this happens. The agents will be able to decide. Because what's happening? If there's a delay in getting a police chief, it's the same thing. The judge then is abroad. The police chief is out in the countryside. There are only a few agents. The agents will be able to decide. Restraining order. You cannot approach your wife. You cannot call your wife. You cannot post on social media. They draw up the paperwork and so on. Let him know about it, and that's it. The restraining order is in effect. That's what the federal Supreme Court decided yesterday afternoon. It's tough on the defendant, guys. We can't accept so much violence anymore, these very serious situations against women, just for being women. We can't. And that's why they're getting tougher. The sentence is already 40 years. That's the longest sentence we have today. 40 years. They're already getting tougher. And if it keeps going, soon it'll be 60. Because there's no other way. There's nothing you can do. Guys, is the relationship over? It's over. What else does the woman have? What's the point of this craziness? Stop being silly. Go get some help, or else you end up in jail. You can decide, or else you go to jail. Let's watch here as the Chief Justice of the Supreme Federal Court explains what I'm telling you right now. In their speeches, obviously, ours is more to explain it clearly. Take a look here.
To read to your excellencies to confirm it is consistent with what was agreed here by consensus. There would be 4 points in the general repercussion holding for topic 1412. The first would remain as I had originally proposed because it does not contradict the others. Emergency protective measures provided for in law number 11,340 of 2006 apply to all forms of gender-based violence against women, regardless of whether it occurs in the domestic, family, or intimate relationship context, and must be applied by the competent court to assess the risk to the physical integrity of the victim. 2. Request for urgent protective measure submitted to a court lacking subject matter jurisdiction must be considered on its merits in order to grant the measure. When there is an immediate risk to the victim's physical or psychological integrity, with immediate referral of the case files to the competent judge, to the specialized court for violence against women, where available, for ratification or revision of the decision. 3. Protection against gender-based violence. Gender-based violence against women includes political violence, an act defined in Article 326B of the Electoral Code, which in this case falls under the jurisdiction of the electoral courts. And 4th, the granting of protective measures is also allowed by police chiefs in urgent situations involving threats or gender-based violence against women. This is what I now submit for the examination and understanding of your excellencies, trying these 4 items, President. In this case, in the case of the police chief, obviously, according to the terms of the law itself, right? It starts to be me.
In this last one, President, I would include the police chiefs, or because it's provided for in the absence of police chiefs, the police officers. But I would include it in the terms of the DI at the specific minute,
have
which I
it here.
can't recall right now. Because then everything would be ad referendum. Everything we decide specifically.
That's it.
I will add, since this is DI 6138, exactly. And therefore, does Minister Khan suggest police chiefs or competent authorities?
Is because the law mentions police chiefs or police officers and police agents.
There you go. That's what I explained to you. Both the police chief and the agents. If the police chief is absent, the agents can give the order and establish the protective measure. Notably, these situations must be confirmed, endorsed, or changed by the judge. But until then, the protective measure has to be established to prevent the worst, to try to prevent the worst. So it's extremely important, and the Federal Supreme Court gave this decision nationwide effect. What does that mean? It applies to all of Brazil. Everyone has to respect it. The police, judges, appellate judges, public prosecutors, the executive, legislative, and judiciary branches. Everyone has to comply with what was determined there. I didn't include it before, but I'll add it now. I found here Justice Estela's decision, which was confirmed by the plenary of the Superior Electoral Court, unanimously bearing Pablo Marçal. Exactly that. Let's see what the justice said. This was just now. The plenary session just took place at the Superior Electoral Court, which decided that Pablo Marçal cannot participate in electoral advertising on TV, in debates, and he also cannot have access to resources or run a campaign. This is a preliminary decision until the final ruling, since he is ineligible, and he also did not register his candidacy with the correct party. He said he was from União Brasil, but then he rushed and joined PRTB. He joined after April 4th. He should have joined before that to be able to run as a candidate. In other words, they've already clipped his wings with a preliminary decision, and later on, they're going to completely take down his candidacy. Let's listen to the statement from the justice assigned to the case about this situation now at the TSC.
This consistent timeline spread over more than 4 months, in which different independent sources converge on the same factual reality.
The public presentation of the candidate as a member of União Brasil after April 4th, which is indicated as the relevant legal date for the meeting, the party affiliation eligibility requirement. I will now resume reading the summary in item 9, in which I state that the delay between the alleged administrative regularization of the party's access to the Filio system and, I believe, in addition to the judicial request for regularization of affiliation, constitutes an additional circumstance that weakens the plausibility of the version presented by the candidate. The risk of harm is characterized by the danger of using public resources and means of electoral propaganda to benefit a candidacy that, upon summary review, proves to be legally unfeasible, especially due to the likely absence of eligibility conditions, a situation that, according to the jurisprudence of this court, exceptions to the rule set forth in Article 16A of Law number 9504 of 97, urgent protection granted to bar until further deliberation on the merits of the candidacy registration. The candidate's access to public campaign resources from the Special Campaign Financing Fund and the Party Fund, as well as to prevent the broadcasting of free electoral advertising on TV, television and radio, and other daily acts of electoral propaganda, including debates. It is the summary of the opinion, Your Excellency, Mr. President.
Any disagreement regarding that? Well,
That was it. And there was no disagreement, okay? Fábio Marçal is pretty much out of the game. And just to emphasize, there are still protests going on in the east zone of São Paulo against Tarcísio and against Flávio Bolsonaro. And they are specifically asking, where's the money? 61 million from Vorcaro. Stolen money, which they say went to the movie. But so far, they haven't accounted for it. That's the situation. Another important situation. You know that Davi Alcolumbre allowed the processing of the constitutional amendment that establishes the end of the 6x1 work schedule. The constitutional amendment has already been approved in the Chamber of Deputies, and for it to become a reality, it needs to be approved in the Federal Senate. Davi Alcolumbre was holding it back, but now he has released it, and it has gone to the Constitution and Justice Committee. Oton de Alencar, president of the Constitution and Justice Committee, says that he already has the necessary votes to approve the constitutional amendment. And it needs to be approved twice in the Federal Senate with a qualified quorum of 3/5. For that, it first needs to pass through the Constitution and Justice Committee. If approved, the constitutional amendment will be valid, establishing that for every 5 days you work, you will have 2 guaranteed days off, without a reduction in salary. Lula is working behind the scenes to try to see if he can get this constitutional amendment approved even before the elections. All right? Paulo Paim, one of the best senators in the country, talked about this here. Listen to what he says.
The president of the Constitution and Justice Committee, Oton Alencar, said that he already has the votes to approve ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule, and consequently for us to move to the 5 days on, 2 days off schedule without a salary reduction. It's good news. Let's all stay vigilant during this concentrated effort. National mobilization is needed, and here in Brasilia as well.
I have been supporting ending the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule for a long time. Last year, in December, I approved a constitutional amendment like this, which was authored by Senator Paulo Paim. And Davi didn't put it up for a vote. It's in his hands. It has already passed through the Constitution and Justice Committee. I think many companies are already adopting the 5 days on, 2 days off schedule. I think that's the right thing to do, right? 2 days to rest, all 5 days, and the rest 2 days. And if possible, in the Senate, in the Constitution and Justice Committee, I have the votes to approve it.
The president of the Constitution and Justice Committee, Oton Alencar, said that he already has the votes to approve it.
It's about putting it to a vote. It's about coordinating so that the members of the Constitution and Justice Committee attend the session. If they attend the session, it will be approved. Once it's approved, it can go to the floor for the first votes. And this has to be urgent. Lula is working to get it approved before the elections. Write this down. And the 6 days on, 1 day off schedule now. Flávio has already spoken out against it, right? He doesn't even care about the worker. He represents the elite, the upper class, the employers, and the worker can just suffer while he works a 3x4 schedule. And that's if we're lucky. If we're being honest, he probably doesn't even show up to the plenary 3 times to work. And we know this situation very well. Meanwhile, we are almost at 100 days. And Flávio Bolsonaro hasn't presented the accounts for the money they received from Daniel Borcaro. Show us, Flávio. Where's Borcaro's money? Put it that way. Those are the right words for YouTube to bring up the situation. Where's the money? Flávio, where's Borcaro's money? I know the money isn't Borcaro's. So, just so you understand better. Flávio, where's the money stolen from Borcaro? Put it that way. It's going to be 100 days. And Flávio hasn't brought the film's financial report. Where did it go? According to him, 61 million came from money stolen from Daniel Borcaro alone. They haven't presented it. It's been almost 100 days. And the people of São Paulo are out there protesting and asking about this. Flávio, where's the money stolen from Daniel Borcaro? He didn't account for it. And if he thinks we're going to forget, we're not going to forget about this. And Mendonça? Let's go. Leave your comment. It's very important. Smash that like button. And more information at 8:30, 12:30, 4:30 p.m., 8 p.m., and 10 p.m. from Monday to Friday. Kisses. See you next time. Always grateful. See you later. Take care. Bye-bye.